This is not a story about crime. It is a forensic analysis of how the safest country in Europe became its most violent. Sweden, the country of Nobel Prizes and social democracy, a nation that built its reputation on equality, safety, and trust. For decades, it was the global benchmark for how a society should function, the place other countries pointed to and said, "That is how it is done." Low crime, high trust, a welfare state that worked. The Swedish model. Today, Sweden's gun homicide rate is 4 deaths per million inhabitants. The European average is 1.6. In 2021, Sweden had the second highest gun homicide rate among 22 European countries studied. Not slightly above average, 2.5 times the European norm. But the most shocking variable is this. In 2022, Stockholm's gun murder rate was 30 times higher than London's on a per capita basis. 30 times. Stockholm, the capital of the country that invented the Nobel Peace Prize. This is not a temporary spike. It is not a bad year. It is a structural crisis that has been building for over a decade, and it did not come from outside Sweden. It grew from within. How did this happen? The answer is not simple, but the data is clear, and the data comes from Sweden's own institutions. From BRÅ, the Swedish National Council for Crime Prevention, the agency tasked with tracking exactly this kind of violence. Sweden's gun violence did not appear overnight. The trajectory is visible in the numbers year by year, in a line that moves in only one direction. In 2013, Sweden recorded 25 fatal shootings, a low number, consistent with a safe, stable, well-functioning society, the kind of number you would expect from the Swedish model. Then the line began to climb. By 2022, that number had reached 62, a record high, more than double in less than a decade. 62 people killed by gunfire in a single year, in a country of 10 million. In 2023, the number dropped to 53, lower than the peak, but still more than twice the 2013 level. The trend did not reverse. It plateaued, at a level that would have been unthinkable 10 years earlier. Now compare that to the rest of Europe. Sweden's gun homicide rate sits at approximately 4 deaths per million inhabitants. Germany is lower, France is lower, the Netherlands is lower, the United Kingdom is lower. Sweden is not an outlier by a small margin. It is an outlier by a factor of 2.5. And these are not random acts of violence, not bar fights that escalated, not domestic disputes. 8 out of 10 fatal shootings in Sweden are linked to criminal networks. This is organized violence, targeted, systematic, planned, and increasingly young. The violence is characterized by conflicts within fragmented criminal milieus, shifting alliances, territorial disputes, personal vendettas that escalate into lethal force. And one of its most alarming features, the involvement of very young perpetrators, sometimes in their early teens, not adults making calculated decisions. Children, carrying out executions. The shootings alone would constitute a national crisis in any European country. But Sweden has a second problem, one that exists almost nowhere else in Western Europe. One that sounds like it belongs in a conflict zone, not in Scandinavia: hand grenades. Between 2011 and 2016, 77 incidents of detonated hand grenades were recorded in Sweden. 77 detonations, in a country known for IKEA and parental leave. The number of incidents involving explosives tripled between 2008 and 2016. Tripled. Researchers and police have noted that this phenomenon is unique compared to neighboring countries. Denmark does not have this problem. Germany does not have this problem. Norway does not have this problem. The weapons are often ex-Yugoslavian M75 models, military-grade hand grenades designed for armed conflict, imported through smuggling routes from the Balkan Wars. Weapons that were manufactured for soldiers, detonating on Swedish residential streets, in apartment complexes, near schools, near playgrounds. And the problem extends far beyond grenades. In 2018, 162 bombings were reported in Sweden, 162 explosions in a single year. By July 2019, there were already 120 bombings, nearly one every 2 days. The situation became so severe that Denmark introduced border controls, not because of immigration, not because of trade disputes, because of explosions crossing the Øresund. That is the scale of the problem. Shootings doubling in a decade, military hand grenades detonating in residential areas, bombings at a rate of nearly one every 2 days. Understanding why this happened requires looking at structural factors, mechanisms. The first is the nature of the criminal networks. These are not traditional structures with clear hierarchies. They are fragmented, fluid, decentralized. Alliances shift constantly. The violence escalates precisely because there is no central authority to impose order. not even criminal order. In a fragmented milieu, violence becomes self-perpetuating. Every slight demands a response. Every response triggers retaliation. The cycle feeds itself. You cannot negotiate with a structure that has no center. You cannot decapitate an organization that has no head. And the justice system struggles to respond. The clearance rate for gun homicides in Sweden is 25%, 1 in 4. Compare that to Germany or Finland at 90%. 3 out of 4 gun murders in Sweden go unsolved. This is a structural failure that actively enables further violence. When perpetrators face a 75% chance of never being caught, deterrence collapses entirely. The second factor is age. The involvement of very young perpetrators is a defining feature of Sweden's crisis. It suggests a recruitment pipeline that reaches deep into vulnerable communities, where criminal networks can access minors who face lighter legal consequences. The networks are weaponizing the legal system's own protections for children. They know the law, and they exploit it. The third factor is supply. The hand grenades point to established smuggling routes that have supplied Swedish networks with military-grade weapons for years. These routes were built over decades. This is not improvised violence. These are weapons of war, deployed on residential streets. The combination is what makes Sweden's situation unique. Fragmented networks, young perpetrators, military weapons, and a clearance rate that provides near impunity. Each factor amplifies the others. The political response has been direct. The Tidö Agreement, which reshaped Sweden's immigration policy, was driven by this crisis. 73% of Swedish respondents believe immigration was too high. The Sweden Democrats built their platform on the link between immigration and violent crime. Today, Sweden faces a paradox. The country responded with the most restrictive immigration policies in its history. Temporary permits, abolished pathways, voluntary return grants of up to $34,000. But the violence is not primarily an immigration problem in the direct sense. It is a criminal network problem. The perpetrators are often Swedish-born. The weapons come from routes established decades ago. Restricting future immigration does not dismantle existing networks. It does not improve a 25% clearance rate. The 2023 figure of 53 fatal shootings remains more than double the 2013 level. The trend has not reversed. It has plateaued at a level that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. And a plateau is not a solution. It is a new normal. Sweden is accepting that 50-plus gun deaths per year is now the baseline. The explosives continue. The infrastructure of violence remains intact. You cannot stop a Balkan weapons shipment by tightening family reunification rules. You cannot improve a 25% clearance rate by abolishing housing laws. The mismatch between the problem and the response is the central tension. Sweden's gun homicide rate remains 2.5 times the European average. For a nation that built its identity on being the safest society in Europe, this is an identity crisis. It is the gap between who Sweden believes it is and what the data says it has become. Sweden's crisis is not about guns. It is not about grenades. It is about a country that built a system on trust and discovered that trust alone cannot hold a society together when its structures fracture. The shootings doubled. The grenades detonated. The bombings averaged 1 every 2 days. And the country that was synonymous with safety now leads Europe in gun violence. Sweden was the safest country in Europe. That is no longer true.